Debt-ridden Greece is under growing public anger as thousands take to the streets to protest tightened austerity measures. Just what are the root causes of the financial crisis in this EU member state? How is it going to affect other countries? And will we see the Union save Greece or let it sink? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Imran Garda. Thousands of protesters have clashed with police on the streets of Athens. They're rallying against the measures being imposed to save the Greek economy. It's the second general strike in the last 2 weeks. Flights, buses and ferries have all been cancelled. Schools and government offices are closed and hospitals are operating with emergency staff only. Well, the Greek government's being forced to act by the European Union. Its growing public deficit is already over 12%, which is 4 times what the EU allows for its members. Greece's national debt also stands at almost $420 billion. Well, the Greek government stands accused of hiding its true economic situation, both borrowing and spending beyond its means. To try to rescue its economy and return to within EU rules, the government is imposing so-called austerity measures. Well, Greece wants to reduce its deficit by more than 3/4 by 2012. To start, it wants to cut it by around 1/3 this year alone. That's a tall order. To achieve it, the government plans to freeze public sector pay, increase taxes along with the price of petrol, and raise the age of retirement from 60 to 63. That's to delay paying out hundreds of thousands of euros in pensions. Well, opinions differed on the streets of Athens, some optimistic, others not.
There is goodwill on the part of Europe to help. We should appreciate that and see what we can do to help so we don't get lost.
I have no confidence in what was decided by the Europeans or what is being planned that will have an effect on the public.
The crisis will be paid for by them. Not a single euro will be paid for by workers.
Greek Prime Minister George Papandreou is adamant that his country will do its utmost to cut its deficit as demanded by the EU countries.
I have taken extra measures, specific measures, to make sure that this program is even furthermore guaranteed. And when I say guaranteed, I want to repeat what I have said, that we are ready to take any necessary measure in order to make sure that the goal of cutting our deficit by 4% in 2010 to the percentage of 8.7 of our GDP will be, we are ready to take any measures in order to make this sure and guaranteed that we reach this goal. So I want to be very clear about that.
Well, joining our discussion today are our guests in Athens, Kostas Ifantis, president of the Hellenic Center for European Studies. Also in Athens, John Sfakianakis, chief economist and general manager at Banque Saudi Fransi. And in Paris, financial analyst Max Kaiser. Gentlemen, thank you all of you for joining us. Kostas Ifantis, it's obvious that thousands of Greeks are angry, are irritated, but can we quantify it? How big do you think the opposition is to these measures?
Well, it's not easy to quantify it, but based on observing what is going on in the Greek society over the last few months, I would say that it's not what happened today or what might happen in another demonstration a few weeks down the road. It's not representative of the general feeling and the general reading of the situation in Greece. I think the majority of Greeks have come to realize that the situation is dire, is grave, and that all these years we've been living beyond and above our means, and now it's not just the time to pay a price, but it's time to put our house in order.
But you may say that this is not representative of the majority. However, there are thousands who have taken to the streets against these austerity measures. Is it fair for a lot of Greek people, a lot of Greeks to be thinking, why should we suffer if we were not the cause of this crisis? We didn't create the crisis. Why are we suffering as a result?
Well, this is easy way out. I mean, is a thinking that can rid us of all responsibility for what has been going on. But we should never forget that we Greeks we have been failing to pay our taxes properly. We've been engaged in a championship of tax fraud and tax evasion. We have been demanding more and more from the states. We have been sort of engaged in an apotheosis of what the state can do for us. We have demonized in many respects the private sector and private initiative. So I really don't think that a few thousands, even some thousands getting in the streets is representative of the general reading of the situation. In the past we've seen, in the recent past, we've seen how easy it is for some groups, political groups, to mobilize a few thousand protesters in the city center in Athens.
Right.
I really don't think it is representative.
John Sfakianakis, do you think that this protest movement is representative of the anger and irritation at not only plunging into this deficit, suffering the crisis, but now having people having to tighten their belts as a result of it?
Well, thank you, first of all, for the invitation. I would say that this is not really representative. I would agree with your previous guest that this is an uncomfortable situation for many, but most of the polls, if not all of the polls conducted recently over the past 2 weeks in Athens and Greece in general, is quite supportive of the government. Greeks and society at large knows very well that they have no other solution but to push ahead, pay more taxes, become less corrupt, reform the system, become more structurally adjusted, and conform to the European Union standards. So I think that what you see today represents in many ways a minority, but the majority knows very well that Greece has no choice in this matter. It has to push ahead. And Greece actually has no other choice but the government that they have right now. If it falters, in general, there is a malaise, a political malaise that you feel in Greece, right, that if the government fails, there is nobody else to take over. The opposition is discredited, and all the others who are claiming to know the recipe or the right recipe cannot adjust because they have never had the experience to rule Greece.
Max Kaiser, the other two gentlemen characterized this as being Greece being in a position where it had no other alternatives. What do you make of it?
Well, first of all, put down the ouzo, and let's talk about some facts here. This debt to GDP ratio, which is now crippling the country. It was the same back in the year 2000. Why was it not reported? Because Goldman Sachs, in conjunction with the Greek government, hid billions and billions of debt. Now, this is the problem. The problem is that you've got bankers like Goldman Sachs and Wall Street colluding with the Greek government to falsify data. To rectify the problem, the Greek government is sent in their intelligence agency to investigate what's going on, and they've hired a former Goldman Sachs banker to head up this particular investigation. So they've got Stockholm Syndrome. They're being held captive by corrupt bankers on Wall Street, and they're blaming themselves. They're beating themselves for somebody else's corruption. That's the corruption on Wall Street. Now you have to laugh at this ridiculous situation because here you've got two Greek analysts saying that, well, we should pay more taxes. We need to get rid of the black market. And yet Goldman Sachs, who advised them on this corruption last year, paid less than 1% in taxes. Goldman Sachs doesn't pay any taxes. So to finance Goldman Sachs' Christmas bonuses, you're going to ask the Greek people to pay more taxes? Do the Greek people get compensated from Goldman Sachs? Do they own stock in Goldman Sachs? This is absurd. Why are you selling your countrymen down the road? And to say there's no alternative is false. There's insurrection is a possibility. Why not get rid of this government? They're totally corrupt.
Okay, let's get a response from Mr. Sfakianakis. That's a good point from Max Kaiser. Greece masked some of its debt in a currency swap deal with the investment firm, the giant Goldman Sachs, which has been in the news a lot in recent months. The Greek people have nothing to do with Goldman Sachs. Why should they suffer?
I completely agree. I mean, I don't think that here one has to say that Wall Street has not colluded with the Greek government at that time. No, I completely agree with this. But what I would say definitely is that one, there has to be a resolution on this. But second of all, the Greek government and Greece has to change. It has to reform. It is too corrupt. It is not transparent. Very few people pay taxes. These are structural adjustments that have to take place, and they have been there for the past 50 years. I'm not saying that this is wrong, but at the same time, I think that there has to be a need that the house has to be reordered. So definitely Wall Street has a say in this, and somebody has to take this to court. But at the same time, I do not think that Greece cannot stay like this. They have to change and reform. And they do not have another chance. This is their chance.
Kostas Ifantis, why didn't Greece get a big bailout from the EU? Surely that could have been a logical step. Did it expect a bailout, and then was it surprised that it didn't get one?
No, well, following the debate in Greece, I don't think that anyone was expecting a bailout. Some people would hope for a bailout, but again, this would only be a solution without addressing the main causes of what is going on for the last 30 years in the Greek economy and in the Greek political system. I would totally agree that what happened in 2001 with Goldman Sachs is a bad thing, but it is only a symptom, or if you like, one of the symptoms of badly designed economic paradigm and political paradigm in Greece since the early 80s. Putting in jail is one thing and is something that should be done, but the more general picture, if we don't want to be reductionist here, is to address the real problems of the real causes of why Greece or some corrupt politicians along engaged with corrupt bankers in Wall Street to do what they did back in 2001. I agree that this is a problem, but it is not the main problem. It is not the problem that we need to face in Greece if we are to change the whole paradigm of economic policy and the way we live in this country.
Max Kaiser, we know there's not going to be a bailout from France, Germany, the big countries within the European Union. Could Greece maybe go to the IMF for help, or would that be even worse?
Jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire. I mean, the IMF is Goldman Sachs. The IMF, World Bank, Goldman Sachs, Wall Street, they're all commingled. They're all working together. This has been now obvious since the credit collapse starting 2 years ago. As Warren Buffett said, when the tide goes out, you see who's not wearing a bathing suit. Now, as the credit crunch has basically deprived these countries and these companies in these countries of credit, we're seeing who is not capable of dealing in the credit crunch. And Greece is an obvious example, but so too is Spain and the other so-called pig nations. But we also see it in Iceland, which is having a vote on March 6th whether or not to appease the financial terrorists on Wall Street, who did the same thing to Iceland. But here's the thing about France and Germany. Germany is the #2 exporter in the world. They don't mind if the euro goes down, so they're using Greece as a whipping boy. They'll say, look at Greece. We need to go in there and reform Greece. Look at bad Greece. Oh, the euro's in trouble. But they benefit hugely by the depression in the
issue, is it?
euro.
Because
they're
Max,
a huge exporter.
at a time
Greece
of high unemployment
exporter.
at home and coming out of a recession, how do the likes of France and Germany justify to their people that they need to give more money to Greece? That's at the crux of it, isn't it?
Well, they're going to jawbone this issue all day long, but not take any action because they know that the professional speculators are driving down the euro. The short position, which the negative bets on the euro are at an historic high. Billions and billions of euros and dollars are bet on the euro's failure. Chief beneficiary of this is going to be Germany, who's a huge export market. So they're just using basically Greece and the poor people in Greece who are losing their jobs and have to go through austerity measures. It has absolutely nothing to do with fundamental reform of that economy. They're basically sausage going through the Wall Street banking machine, and they need to ban Goldman Sachs from doing business in their country. They need to ban Wall Street firms from doing any business in their country. Until you get rid of the financial terrorists in your country is going to continue to lose jobs, unemployment is going to go up, and the quality of life is going to continue to go down because you're being held captive by financial terrorists. Don't you get it? Get rid of them. Or maybe you like being abused by terrorists. That could be your thing. You know, a lot of people enjoy that kind of sadomasochism. That might be something you're into. But if you're not into that, get rid of the financial terrorists from your country.
Okay, let's broaden this out even more and talk about those so-called, those pig nations, as you mentioned. Well, the whole of the GDP in the Eurozone and EU grew by just 0.1% last year. And Greece is not the only European country struggling during the financial crisis. PIGS is the acronym that's been given to 4 countries in deep economic trouble: Portugal, Ireland, Greece and Spain. Well, Portugal's unemployment rate is 10.4%, while the GDP growth sank to 0.9% in 2009. The percentage of unemployed in Ireland fell to about 13%, and they have a GDP of 0.3%, both of which are comparable to Greece. Well, Spain has the worst unemployment rate at nearly 20%. Its budget deficit was minus 0.1% of GDP last year. Mr. Sfakianakis, as we broaden it out, is there a fear within Europe that the pig nations are next?
Well, it could be. This is a contagion. Definitely at its source is Wall Street and the speculators. I don't disagree at all. Currencies are being played out and games are being played out with currencies, whether it's a short or a long position. Now they're taking a hit on the euro, so I agree. But at the same time, I would say that Goldman Sachs and what it has been doing in Greece has been also doing the same thing in other countries. So I would say that there is an investigation on that. Definitely, there could be a contagion effect, and that's why the European Union has to eventually step in, and I think they will step in, whether the Germans like it or not, because here they do have a credibility problem. If they cannot handle and bail out or support on a cast iron basis a country like Greece, then they do have a credibility problem. So yes, there could be contagion, and we could see very well Spain, Portugal, Ireland and others. The UK economy and its fiscal situation is the same as Greece. So I don't think that anybody should be advertising the British model or the Anglo-Saxon model as being the model that has saved global capitalism. So there could be some contagion, definitely.
Kostas Ifantis, many see this, the Greece issue, as rocking the very foundations of the EU. This is from the Financial Times. Let me quote it to you. The Greek crisis is about the very basis on which European unity has been built for the last 60 years. It threatens not just the euro, but the entire edifice of the European Union. Mr. Ifantis, is that an exaggeration or is it true?
Well, I think it is an exaggeration. I don't really see the argument in that. I've got a hard time to understand what it means. The European Union edifice or the European integration edifice has been built upon solidarity, economic, political, social, and that has been demonstrated over the decades since the 60s. Now, of course, it's a different situation, but I think the FT has been sort of reiterating a deeply held British view about how the European integration model should be working. But this is not a view that is very popular or is shared in Europe. But allow me to say this: we tend to forget what has become of the European Union in the last 5 years. There was a big bang enlargement You have 27 member states. You have deep differences, very big differences among these member states. When in the early 90s we had reached a point where most of the economies of the 15 nation states were sort of converging. Now suddenly we are in a mosaic of very different economic situations in Europe, irrespective of the current crisis, and that is something that needs to be addressed. But certainly the European Union has failed to address this early enough. We've been in Europe, we've been sort of very introvert for the last 10 years, trying to rectify the institutional deficit that has been created. Yeah.
Okay, Max Kaiser, with that mosaic that Mr. Ifantis mentioned, is the European Union at a crisis, at a crossroads rather, and in crisis? Does it have a sort of identity crisis? It doesn't know what it is and where it wants to go?
Well, it's a global crisis. The Eurozone, the UK, and now in the Middle East with Dubai and now Kuwait having big problems. This is a global credit crunch. So it's a global problem. And the solution is to let the forces of economics and capitalism work their way through the system. By governments coming in and doing these bailouts and these other extra normal activities, they're just prolonging the day of reckoning. Now, Europeans, if they want to play in the big leagues and they want to have big export businesses and they want to have big shiny economies, they have to understand that economies go up and they go down. You can't have capitalism on the way up and then decide, oh, we're going to be socialists on the way down. You have to pick. Either you're a socialist or you're a capitalist. You can't just pick and choose depending on your mood. What Greece is experiencing is the downside of free markets. Now they have to take the pain, and it's going to be harsh, but they'll come out the other side stronger for it. But merely delaying the pain is going to make the situation a lot worse, and they're being used as a whipping boy by professional currency speculators, and they're never going to extricate themselves from this problem until they take some drastic measures like kicking out these bums, these charlatans.
Okay, we're running out of time. I'm going to give John Sfakianakis the final word here. What if these austerity measures fail, Mr. Sfakianakis? What then?
Well, if they fail, definitely they have to be bailed out, be it IMF or the EU, and I think it's going to be the latter. I think that the Germans, despite the noises that they make, they will have to bail out Greece. Greece definitely has to reform, and at the crux of the matter, they have to become competitive. This is a hugely uncompetitive economy. This is it for Greece.
Gentlemen, I enjoyed this discussion. It was educational for me. Thank you very much, Mr. Ifantis, Sfakianakis, and Kaiser. Thank you all for your thoughts and expertise. And thank you so much, the viewer, for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. As always, we welcome your comments, your suggestions, or your questions. You can email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye-bye for now.